Thank you very much, Juan Pablo. Thank you, Maria, Christian, and thank you to ACHS for doing this research. I've been following this situation since COVID and its relationship to happiness since the beginning. And to my mind, this is the most important research that has been done to date in the context of work. Now, it's important for various reasons. First of all, because it highlights important issues. But second, just the fact that this research is being done sheds light on a real important issue in the workplace and in society in general. So I'd like to say a few words about the importance of this study, especially in the context of the 5 main insights that Maria spoke about earlier. So let me begin with the current state. What the research showed is that happiness levels have gone down since the pandemic, which is not surprising. This is something that most of us knew. In fact, levels of anxiety and depression, whether in Chile, whether in Latin America, and around the world, are at an all-time high. Now, what's troubling about this is that at work, the situation is even worse than at home. In other words, people experience less well-being in the workplace. Now, why is that so troubling? Well, there are 2 reasons for it. The first reason is that, we want people to be happy. We want people in Chile to be happy. We want people around the world to be happy because happiness is a value in and of itself. The second reason why happiness matters is because when you lower levels of well-being, performance goes down. When you increase levels of well-being, performance improves. You see, there is a common misperception about the relationship between success and happiness, between performance and well-being. Most people believe that in order to increase levels of happiness, we need to become more successful. If we perform better at work, if we make more money, if we succeed in school, if you're talking about children, then happiness will come as a result of that success. Well, that turns out to be wrong. Success, whether at work, whether in school, whether in life in general, only leads to a short-term increase in well-being, very short-term. So does this mean that there is no relationship between happiness and success? No, there is a very strong relationship between the 2. Only it's the opposite of what most people believe. Success does not lead to happiness, but happiness does lead to success. What we know from a lot of research is that if you increase levels of well-being, even by a little bit, by a few percentage points, what you find is that the individual or the organization becomes more creative, more innovative, that teamwork improves, relationships in general improve. What we find is that productivity goes up significantly as a result of increasing levels of happiness. Employees at work are less distracted and more engaged, more motivated. And finally, retention levels go up significantly. In other words, if you increase levels of happiness, even by a little bit, people are less likely to leave the workplace. They're more likely to stay. And today, as we know, people leaving the workplace is a major issue in Chile and beyond. So increasing levels of happiness matters because we want people to be happier. It's a good thing in and of itself. The second reason is because increasing levels of happiness will also make people at work and also children at school more effective, more successful, more creative, more engaged, more motivated, as well as physically healthier. Now, what the research that we did over the past few months showed are a few things. Let me quickly go over just a couple of points that Maria and Juan Pablo talked about. First of all, women are less happy, and they're less happy for especially because they feel less psychologically safe. And I'll talk about this in a minute. Second, the young generation is less happy. Now, what can leaders, and here is the most important question that we need to ask as a result of this research. What can leaders do to increase levels of happiness, whether it's of women, whether it's of youth, whether it's of the general population, men, women, young and old? What role can they play? Because that role is important. Because if the leaders can increase levels of well-being, it means that organizations will perform better as well as feel better. So the first point I want to bring up, which Maria mentioned, is psychological safety. What is psychological safety? Psychological safety is about feeling that it's okay to make mistakes, feeling that it's okay to speak up, feeling that it's okay to say, I don't know, feeling that it's okay to ask for help. Now, it turns out that psychological safety is the number one determinant of organizational creativity and productivity. It is, of course, very much related to happiness, as we see in our study. Now, in our study, we see that women in general tend to feel less psychologically safe in the workplace. Now, this doesn't mean that all men feel psychologically safe. They don't. It just means that women feel less so. So the question is, what can a leader do to increase psychological safety and through that significantly increase innovation, creativity, productivity, retention, and overall well-being? Well, the first thing that leaders need to take into consideration is being open to what employees, men and women, have to say. It is first and foremost about listening. Now, the result that we found about psychological safety in our study goes along with other research that has been conducted for many years in companies. And what that research shows is that in difficult times, such as the times we're going through today, the number one characteristic that is important for great extraordinary leadership is the ability to listen. Not to give inspiring speeches, not to be charismatic, not strategic thinking, not how brilliant the leader is. These things, of course, are important. The most important thing for a leader in difficult times is to be able to listen, to be able to be present to what the employees have to say. Now, women, given higher levels of empathy, are more sensitive to that, and therefore they experience less psychological safety. So if managers and leaders can take this into consideration and listen a little bit better, give more space, place for employees to express themselves, psychological safety will go up. As a result, well-being in the organization will go up. As a result, productivity, creativity, performance, retention, teamwork, all these important variables will spike, will increase, will go up. So listening is the first thing that I would recommend leaders think about. Second, one of the interesting findings that the study highlights is that the young generation is less happy than the older generation. And the question is, why? Well, the answer is because the young generation relies more on online interactions and less on in-person interactions. Now, we know from our research and from other research, and Juan Pablo pointed this out, that relationships are an incredibly important determinant of well-being. In fact, what the research shows, research coming out of Harvard and other places, is that the number one predictor of happiness, individual happiness, is quality of relationships. Now, it doesn't matter with whom. For some people, it may be a relationship with a partner. For other people, it may be a relationship in the family. For others, it may be friends groups. For others, it may be relationships at work. When we encourage relationships, we increase levels of well-being. But the thing is that they have to be in-person, face-to-face interactions, because 1,000 friends on social media are no substitute for that 1 or 2 or 3 close, intimate friends. What our research pointed out is that having the flexibility to do telework is important, which it is for men, women, young and old. At the same time, workplaces need also create the conditions, need to encourage real face-to-face, in-person interactions. And by doing so, levels of happiness will go up for the young as well as for the older generation. Real relationships are critical for well-being. The next topic that's important for leaders to think about is the sense of meaning and purpose, a sense of vocation in the work. This turns out to be a very important determinant of happiness, especially for the young generation, but not only, at every age, for both men and for women. Now, how can leaders help the employees increase levels of meaning and purpose? Well, it's by highlighting the importance of the work that they do. You know, if I go to work and every day I think, well, all I'm doing is I'm moving object from place A to point B from point A to point B, that's meaningless. But if I know that the fact that I move this object from point A to point B makes a difference for other employees, makes a difference for my clients, makes a difference for the organization and my society, then my work has more meaning and purpose, and I'm much more likely to find well-being in the workplace. So, just to repeat, the things that leaders do make a big difference. They, to a great extent, and we saw this from our research, they, to a great extent, determine whether or not employees will be happy at work. And that will also have an effect on how happy or unhappy they are at home. So the first thing to do is to ensure psychological safety. A workplace where it's okay to make mistakes, a workplace where it's okay to say, I don't know, a workplace where it's okay to ask questions, to speak up, and to learn. And in order to create that workplace, leaders have to listen first. Then leaders need to encourage real interactions. The hybrid workplace can work very well with more flexibility, which seems to be very important for many employees. So have telework and at the same time also create opportunities for real in-person meetings, because relationships are the number one predictor of happiness. And finally, help employees identify a sense of meaning and purpose in their work, in what they do, to show that what they do matters. And if we increase levels of well-being, even by a little bit, even if we're talking 3-4%, which every leader can do, if we increase levels of well-being, even by a little bit, what we will see immediately is a translation to higher productivity, higher creativity, better teamwork and relationships, higher levels of retention. In other words, a healthier, happier, and better workplace, which is ultimately the vision and the purpose of ACHS and this important research that it carried out. Thank you, and we'll open it up for questions now.